The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio. Want the real story behind the sound bites and headlines? Let's find the facts. Remember, it's not a conspiracy theory if it's the truth. You are not paranoid or confused. You just need to know.
Welcome in, everybody. It is time for everything you need to know. I'm Keefer on the Tony Kurre Radio Network, and delighted to be with you as we kick off another week in the hot summer months of almost August now. When you hear this broadcast, it'll probably be August, as we're recording this here right at the end of July. I'm going to talk about in the second part of the program the fact that it's such a topic of conversation, how excessively hot it is. Well, just a teaser for what I'm going to talk about. It's the end of July, the beginning of August. Guess what? It's hot at this time of year every year, and all of the hysteria you are hearing from all the usual suspects, you really need to take with a grain of salt, because they wear on you to the point where you start imagining that it's excessively hot and forget about what time of the year it is. So that's just a little preview. First, I have to talk about what happened last week in a courtroom in Wilmington, Delaware. And I know everybody's probably heard a lot of the sound bites and a lot of the opinions, depending on where you get your information, of what took place there. But it's something that I really need to talk about, because we witnessed something that we haven't seen in quite some time in this day of machine politics and the deep state in Washington and the weaponization of agencies, bureaus, and departments, things that we count on: the Department of Justice, the FBI, the intelligence services, the IRS, all have gone political. And it's really a sad situation in our country right now, what we're witnessing, that the government is mobilizing and becoming more and more of a Marxist regime. And I know that sounds like extreme language to say that they are going in a Marxist direction. But the playbook of these revolutionaries, these wokes, these progressives, is along the lines of the step-by-step procedures taken when a Marxist regime is being imposed. It starts with suppression of information, taking away your free speech, and it morphs into the government deciding everything in your life that is permissible and what you cannot have and cannot do. Basically, it starts to be the direct erosion of your individual ability to make choices, utilizing your freedom and liberty guaranteed by your Constitution. And remember, these people may be occupying the current central government, but they are not the government in this system. The government is myself and you and everybody you know, the citizens of the United States, we the people, a government of the people, for the people, by the people. You are the government. Or as Jack Nicholson, it wasn't Jack Nicklaus. He said, oh, that was a good putt. Jack Nicholson said in the movie Chinatown, he said, I am the Shore Patrol. Well, you are the government, and don't you forget it. So last week, what took place in a federal courthouse with a judge named Narika, who was a Trump appointee, but she's a lifelong Democrat, and was recommended by both Democrat senators from the state of Delaware, very highly thought of in all circles. The judge came in to oversee the hearing of Hunter Biden, the plea arrangement hearing. And I imagine that most of you have heard that in the couple of weeks preceding this, that led to this particular session in court, Hunter Biden's lawyers had reached an agreement with the Department of Justice prosecutors to make a plea deal on a couple of charges, just a couple of little minor violations. One was a gun violation where Hunter Biden had purchased a firearm and completely falsified the information in his application to be able to do so. The portion of that particular application that he falsified was one that was added at the insistence of his father, Joe Biden, in 1993 when the gun law was revised and the current situation of structure was imposed. And Joe Biden was most insistent on having a stringent set of penalties for anyone who would falsify that information and submit improper documentation. Basically, anyone who lies faced prison time. It was a felony violation to apply for a firearm and lie about it in order to obtain one. Hunter Biden did not mention anything about his drug addiction, his treatment for drug addiction, or his dishonorable discharge from the Navy because of repeated failed drug tests. So that was a serious violation, a felony. There are a number of people around the country. I should have the name of the individual, but there was a rapper who went up 5 years for the exact same offense. Hunter Biden was getting a diversion program, which prosecutors said was unprecedented. They could never remember. And of course, this isn't the prosecutors on this case. It was every legal expert that saw this deal, that he was getting a diversion opportunity to go and do whatever he had to do in terms of being educated on the seriousness of gun ownership or whatever nonsense a diversion program entails. A completely unprecedented arrangement. And I'm sure it had nothing to do with the fact that his name was Biden. The other two things in this plea deal were in reference to tax evasion charges and falsification of IRS forms. And I think it doesn't need a big explanation of why that's illegal and a felony. Hunter Biden, the controversial 2 of the years that he served on the board of the Ukrainian energy company Burisma, Hunter Biden collected over $1 million in salary, about $83,000 a month. Plus, there's evidence that has emerged now that he and his father, the big guy, Joe Biden, both got $5 million payoffs from this energy company in exchange for making the moves to have the prosecutor in Ukraine dismissed. The prosecutor there, equivalent to our attorney general, because he was cracking down on the corrupt company Burisma, which Hunter Biden served on the board. And what did Joe Biden have to do with that? He had been designated by Barack Obama as vice president to be completely in charge of all policy dealing with Ukraine in those days. Of course, now he's funding with billions and billions of your dollars a war that's never seemingly going to end. Ukraine invaded by Russia, and he has vowed that he will stick with that. And it doesn't matter how long it takes or how much it costs. We have Ukraine's back. But doesn't it occur to you that that might come from the fact that they have all this compromising information that is now leaking and is becoming public knowledge, and every day more and more is revealed. But that's a subject for another day. The walls are really closing in on the Bidens. And this whole Hunter Biden situation is directly correlates with the President Joe Biden situation. So the DOJ lawyers decided that they would take these multi-million-dollar tax evasions of no disclosure of any of the Burisma funds by Hunter Biden and any of his international dealings, which he's not, by the way, licensed. You have to have a foreign agent license to conduct business overseas involving U.S. policies. And he does not have that either, just another minor detail. But the plea agreement was going to take these felony charges that involved almost $300,000 in unpaid taxes and falsifying returns by not disclosing the amounts that he made, and busting them down to misdemeanor charges with a fine and no jail time. Now, anybody else listening to this show or anybody else that you know, there is no way that this kind of deal would be made for any of us. These would be 3 serious felony charges with anywhere from 5 at minimum to 20 years jail time and massive fines and remuneration required. But this is the deal they brought into the courtroom. It's been hotly debated up until the court session last week in Wilmington, which, by the way, is the site of Joe Biden's house in Delaware. Hunter Biden has lived there for many, many years off and on as he pursued his nefarious activities all around the country and the globe. Crack addiction and influence peddling and all of the other things the Biden crime family is involved in. And don't listen to people saying this is baseless, there's no evidence. There is a mountain of evidence, and it gets bigger and bigger every day. So a lot of people were incredulous that they were going to give him this plea deal on these serious charges that start things off. And the question, of course, was asked during the discussion, well, is this going to close the book on Hunter Biden in terms of being investigated by the DOJ? And the response was, oh, absolutely not. There's still an ongoing investigation. But it was strange because the defense counsel were saying, no, it's our understanding that this is it. This will be the plea deal, and all further investigation and charges against Hunter Biden will be null and void. And that's an important factor when you hear what happened in the courtroom. So the judge convenes the hearing. The prosecution stands up and says, we've reached a plea arrangement, went through the details that I just described to you. And the judge looked at the prosecutor and simply asked one question. I'd like to ask you, looking at these provisions, have you as a prosecutor separating yourself from this case, have you ever seen a plea arrangement like this where diversion is given in this serious felony gun charge and 2 severe felony tax evasion charges are busted down to misdemeanors? And his response was, no, I have not. And she said, well, neither have I. So I really need to talk about the reasons for these unusual requests and this unbelievable plea deal. And he basically went on to say, well, due to evidence that we can't disclose because of an ongoing investigation and due to the circumstances, think about that word, the circumstances, I mean, could that have meant that this is the president's son, so we have to do something different? And the circumstances are, for anybody who has a functioning brain, that the plea agreement is not in deference to Hunter Biden, who none of them give any 2 bits of care about. This is about protecting Joe Biden, because with this plea deal, and if this was the end of the Hunter Biden investigation, it would definitely be a major factor in not implicating any further than he already is. And believe me, he is really implicated, Joe Biden, in protecting his presidency and his candidacy coming up in his announced reelection bid in 2024. So if all that is really what's at stake here, it's very interesting. Then she shifted to asking questions of the defense. You hear conflicting terms here. How do you respond to the fact that this supposedly is going to immunize your client from any further prosecution by agreeing to these under double jeopardy provisions, which basically means you can't be charged for the same crime twice once the case has been adjudicated, and the fact that the prosecutor says that the investigation is ongoing, and the defense attorney says our agreement, our understanding is that this will be the end of all investigation of Hunter Biden by this Department of Justice. So immediately the prosecution says that is not what we agreed to. The whole reason that the ongoing investigation was even tacked onto this was so Congress could not asked for all unlimited access to materials regarding all of this that have emanated from the IRS's own investigation. They've got tons of evidence. The IRS whistleblowers came forward last week and testified in Congress and revealed all of their information. I've mentioned to you on this show before, they have no axe to grind. They're just tax professionals working for the IRS, and they are outraged at the fact that there's not equal treatment of this citizen. And it's such a fix. It's such the thing that everybody is so disgusted with their federal government and all of the weaponization and all of the politicization that I talked about earlier in the broadcast. This was the ultimate fix, and there was a disagreement right in the courtroom. The irony was the same tactic that they had to utilize to keep records from falling into hands that they didn't want to see, that they can't give you those because this is a, quote, ongoing investigation, was now being disputed by the defense, who they made the deal with. And the defense was saying, well, there can't be an ongoing investigation because our client has agreed to plead guilty here to take that away. So the judge was incredulous and said, you guys need to go back and talk this out and come back here with, whatever response you have, because you've supposedly reached an agreement. I don't see any language in this agreement that specifies that the investigation would be coming to an end and that no further investigation will take place on Hunter Biden's behalf. And it turned out that that was intentionally not written in the front part of the agreement. It was on like page 15, buried in like a single sentence. And for the lawyers to try to perpetrate this ridiculous fraud on this judge, who smelled it out immediately and said, this just won't stand. It's really one of the most ridiculous, bizarre bastardizations of justice that we've seen in this country in many, many years. So basically, the smug Hunter Biden, who's just a private citizen, by the way, he has no ties to his dad in terms of protecting him or being a factor in this prosecution. Hunter Biden arrived in a highly secured 8-car motorcade to the courtroom, emerged and gave a smug smile to the assembled press, which tells you right away this was the fix, because it wasn't just Fox News on hand as usual on these matters. You had all the big boys, ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, all lined up because they were anticipating a victory statement from Hunter Biden as he emerged from the courtroom, completely just wrist slapped and out of trouble for years of serious felonious offenses. This was going to be the big moment that all the networks could look in the camera and with a straight face say, so Hunter Biden basically let off with no penalty, which proves that all of these allegations, all of this evidence, everything is false. The Bidens are not complicit in any kind of nefarious plot whatsoever. And it all blew up, and Hunter Biden did not emerge from the courtroom with any smug smile. He stomped to his car, jumped in with a fuming expression. His lawyers later described his attitude as absolutely livid at what took place in that courtroom, because he was getting the ultimate get out of jail free card. And the judge basically, by just asking some basic legal questions, tore it up right in front of his face. Congratulations to Judge Norelka for actually doing her job. A judge on a bench is supposed to make decisions based on the Constitution, based on the laws of that particular jurisdiction, and most importantly, on an equal and unbiased basis, no matter who the client is. And in this case, justice was served. She's asked them to come back in 30 days. Maybe they'll come back with some more, creative malarkey, because this is a rare a rare example of both sides wanting the same thing. Of course, Hunter Biden's lawyers trying to get him completely off the hook, basically, and the prosecutors for the DOJ, who are under tremendous pressure right now for misdeeds, mishandling, and slow walking this whole operation, this whole series of Hunter Biden investigation. 2 of the tax years that also were affected have now expired due to the statute of limitations. So he was already off the hook for that. Once again, if that were you or I, and we owed $300,000 or $400,000 in taxes, do you think they would let the statute of limitations expire on those? This is the most blatant example of abuse of our justice system and favoritism towards someone who is in a position to cause great damage to the leader of this particular administration and this basically space holder that is doing exactly what he's told while they try and it is what it is, while they try and take over our representative republic and make it into a Marxist central all-powerful government. So that was the amazing thing that happened last week. I hope that's some details that you have not been privy to and have now knowledge of, because that's what occurred. The biggest fix attempt in the history of our legal system was blown up because you had an actual competent and integrity judge, even though it was on the home field of the Bidens right in Wilmington, step in, ask the right questions, and do the right thing. And legal analysts that don't have an axe to grind are saying the questions she asked and the way she handled that hearing was exactly the way she should have. So a little bit of faith renewal in the system from what happened the other day. I promised you one extra little side note here, and that is, and I don't have a lot of time to talk about it, but all of this government corruption, all these different things, they don't matter anyway, because last week also in New York, the United Nations General Secretary, a gentleman by the name of Gutierrez, Ricardo Gutierrez, he's from South America somewhere, basically declared we're all screwed anyway because we are now in a global boiling, not global warming, we are in a global boiling period where temperatures are becoming unmanageable. Life as we know it's not going to be sustainable on the earth unless we act now. And that's the name of this new situation. Act now. It's an emergency by the United Nations, calling all the developed countries of the world in the Northern Hemisphere to come together, solidarity. It's time to solve all the problems with our planet. And that means we've got to overhaul our lifestyles completely, stop driving our fossil fuel cars, stop using air conditioners and stoves and water heaters unless they've been specially designed to lessen the carbon footprint of each one of us. Because if we can stop that, we can reverse the trend. By the way, they also mentioned that these developed countries, particularly and certainly basically exclusively the United States, needs to pony up billions of dollars in reparation payments to all the underdeveloped countries of the world who their awful contribution to this terrible situation needs to be remedied. So basically, if we pay all of these countries around the world billions of dollars, that will immediately start to change the climate situation, and everything will be hunky-dory, and we'll all live happily ever after singing Kumbaya. That's the biggest load of BS ever. That's what this is all about. It's about getting hold of the United States in terms of its resources and its wealth. It's about making the United States a global citizen as opposed to a complete shining example where everybody aspires to be. This is just an extortion attempt. It's the same tactic that's being used by the same people that are trying to take over our government and change our way of life. And you can bet your bottom dollar, because coincidentally, when they want to institute this is right about the time of the 2024 election, the Act Now worldwide initiative. And if a Democrat administration is elected or legislative majorities on that side, that's the party that has sold out. I've told you I'm not a big fan of the Republicans either, but the Democrats' leadership is now in league with all of these initiatives because it's the quickest and most certain way they're going to secure power for years and years and maybe forever in this country that will never be able to be taken away. And what is taken away is your rights of a citizen and your rights to make your own decisions with the freedom the Constitution gives you. So, yes, it's awfully hot outside. It's been very hot in Phoenix, over 100 degrees for days on end. But everybody really just take a step back and figure that this is not a major aberration from what it is every time this time of year. It's summer, it's hot, it will be cool when the fall rolls around soon. And I don't know, at that point, they'll be telling you that it's 74 and it's supposed to be 72. Just think this, and I'll leave you with this. This planet's been here 4.5 billion years. Do you think the planet might have something to do if there's some adjustments? If the temperature variation is true, and this is only comparing it to recorded temperatures. Recorded temperatures only date back a couple hundred years. They don't have recorded temperatures for the 1200s or back in the prehistoric days, BC. By all computer models, the planet was much hotter back then than it is now. So you don't hear all those facts. You don't hear that the Jackson Hole Ski Resort was opened almost 6 weeks later than normal this year because winter stuck around a lot longer there than usual, and they were able to extend their season. You don't hear about all that. You don't hear the polar ice cap is within days of completely falling apart and melting. That was the big thing in the Al Gore documentary all those years ago. So anyway, it's just food for thought. If there's some climate adjustments, if there's some aberrations, some things changing, the planet may just have something to do with that and have everything to do with it, because the 140 years of industrialization, if you go out tomorrow and trade your SUV for a responsible electric car, is that really going to be the difference? If we fork over billions of dollars to underdeveloped nations, is that going to change the weather pattern? No, absolutely not. Use some common sense. Recognize this for what it is. It's a power grab for money, and it's a power grab for control. And that's been the central theme of everything we've always told you you need to know. I'm Kip Keefer. We'll see you next week right here on Tony Curry Radio.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Curry Radio.